NIO stock was up almost 24% last week. It's up 20% in the last month and 23% in the last 3 months. So this stock looks as if it's on the rise and is worthy of your attention. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the recent price action for NIO stock and a possible trading opportunity. Let's take a look. I'd like to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/DavidB for the 5 best stocks to buy now. Use my special link to get $200 off their epic annual subscription. Now, if you find value in my analysis of NIO stock today or other stocks on my channel, you may also find value in my email newsletter. If you subscribe, I'll send you professional trading tips to help you make more profits trading stocks. Link in the description below. Check it out. On the monthly chart for NIO, looking at the big picture, we can see this stock has been bearish for a long time. So since the peak of $66 back in January 2021, over 4 years now, NIO has been heavily sold off. From this high, NIO did make consecutive lower highs and lower lows, confirming it was in a long-term downtrend. And you can see it added a trend line just to confirm these peaks here are moving down in consecutive lower fashion. You can see the trend line there is less steep than the first, indicating that trend is slowing down. And NIO is looking for support. And you can see on the monthly chart and the big picture, $3.35 does look like a pretty strong level where NIO has found support on multiple occasions. Now, coming down to the weekly chart for NIO, we can see there was a price peak created back in September 2024. This was around about $7.71, after which NIO was sold off, and there has been a number of counter trends with the price being brought back up to the underside of the trend line. But it failed to break through, indicating a trend reversal. And you can see each time it was sold off, it did move lower to create lower lows. In the first week of April, NIO was sold off into this level here of $3. And it does look as if now that is a key level for this stock. After which buyers came back in, there was a counter trend moving it back up towards the underside of the trend line. It didn't quite make $5 before it was sold off again. But this time, if you notice, the sellers couldn't push the price back under $3.35, obviously a higher base than this $3 level here. And we did see this basing pattern throughout June and the first week of July. So you can see here that price didn't really break this level of $3.35. And most importantly, last week, NIO had a very bullish week, and it poked its head above this medium-term trend line. And it does look as if this week the price wants to move higher. There's more buying happening. And at the moment, I'm recording this on Wednesday, price closed on the weekly chart, so after Tuesday's session at $4.26. So it's looking good right now. It does look as if it wants to move higher. And coming down to the daily chart, we can really see that buying action which has happened in the last 5 trading sessions. The price really took off in this session here last Thursday and moved up and closed at about $3.69 before on the Friday an even bigger bullish bar breaking through the trend line, peaking at $4 before closing just underneath at $3.90. And of course, this week, the last 2 days, Monday has seen the price move higher, and yesterday price moved higher again. And importantly, yesterday it opened about $4.25. Sellers had to go try to push the price back down, but the buyers came back in and it actually closed right back where it opened. So it does suggest in the next session price wants to move higher again. Now, we have seen price action for NIO like this before. You can see a similar push up back in April this year, which ended up peaking out at $4.44 before being sold off. Counter trend, sold off again and coming down to this level of $3.35. However, it does look as if now NIO has tested this level a couple of times. So it does look as if there's more probability that NIO is actually trying to get out of this zone here and move up towards, $4.45, $5. So if you wanted to trade NIO stock short term, what are your options? Well, there's a couple of things that can give you an idea of this stock setting up for a potential trade. The first thing we've got NIO finding support here at $3. It's moved up, it's pulled back and found a higher base at 335, suggesting price wants to move higher. And secondly, we've got this trend line break. So if price can close for the week, this week, above this trend line, that would indicate the trend is changing. Now, if you're using trend line rules, then it's a good idea to wait for 2 full weeks for price action to close above that trend line before potentially taking an entry on the next week after that, so perhaps in 3 weeks' time. But one thing I like to do to get more confirmation that the buyers are in control is you want to see that price break that trend line for a few weeks and then wait for that first red bar, wait for the pullback, wait to see how much selling pressure there is at higher prices to see if the buyers can stay in control. So effectively, we want price action to break the trend line, perhaps move up towards 475 in the next couple of weeks. And then we need to see a red bar to see what the sellers have got. And perhaps there'll be selling pressure back into 430, for example. And then you can enter on confirmation once price takes out the previous price peak here. Theoretically, it could be around about 475. So if you were to take an entry around about 475, theoretically, and you used a 20% stop loss, the first level of possible resistance would be this level here, around about 550. So price action would have to get through there. It's about 16% upside to that target. So it's not an ideal scenario. You'd have to probably look a bit higher and target this 771 level. So this trade setup on initial entry, looking at this target here, is probably not worthwhile. It's too high risk. Considering the volatility of NIO, you'd have to use a 20% stop loss. Looking at these bars here, that's how much the price can shift week to week. You'd have to give it that wiggle room to get going. And of course, targeting here just isn't worth the risk to reward. So you'd have to look at this target up here more short to medium term. And to do that, you might want to wait until price actually gets above this level here of 551. So this entry might present itself in the next 2 to 6 weeks. Price needs to first break and close above the trend line. We need to see a pullback and then price to break this 551 peak over here. If it can break and hold above, and then test this level, you could enter on confirmation once it takes out the price peak following that level break. So this higher entry around about $6 in theory would give you a risk to reward of 1.31, targeting that 771 peak over here and using a 20% stop loss. You could, for example, use a tighter stop loss. You could use that 550 marker as your stop, but with the volatility of NIO, I'm not sure that's the right thing to do, but it's up to you based on your risk management profile. And of course, we know NIO can move fast when it takes off. You can see here with this price action here, it moved from 364 all the way up to $7 in about 5 weeks. So there's every possibility that if the buyers get behind this stock, and the earnings report is positive in the next release, it could take off, and quite quickly it could move through 771 and potentially reach this next key level here around about $9.50. So this is possible, but NIO still remains a speculative stock for trading. It is volatile. It is in a long-term downtrend. You've got to be careful. You would be getting in very early down at these levels here. But of course, getting in early can be very rewarding. High risk, but high reward. So those are my thoughts on NIO stock. It is looking good. It does look as if it's on the rise and perhaps, not confirmed yet, is this the bottom for NIO? Is $3 the bottom? It does look as if it's moved up and found this higher base, and now it's broken that trend line, potentially this week. So the next few weeks are going to be critical. Watch this stock closely. Thanks for watching.